Uh, oh,
I'm in here and I left.
oh, I see.
It didn't. You ready, Sheila? Okay. All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming to the Rapid City Area Schools regular board meeting. Before we get called with roll call, the questions that you've been asking yourself all your life is now, I will now answer that question on how to raise your hand. If you go to the bottom of your screen, you will see react or reactions. You press on that and voila, you are able to raise. And I think what happens in reverse, you press it again and it will say lower your hand. All right. Now, so tonight I'll only see raised hands on the computer. So no, that's not true. All right. Sheila will have roll call.
Troy Carr,
Here.
Jamie Clapham. Here. Katie Urban.
Here.
Donna Moore.
Here.
Walt Swan.
Here.
Angela Rafferty.
Here.
And Christine Stephenson.
Here.
All right, I'll ask everyone to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. The approval of the proposed agenda. I have two corrections or edits. We will have Dr. Thompson's superintendent report will be before our sharing the success tonight. Okay, so 7 will move up to after 3. We also, unless a board member has any other information, we don't have anything to discuss in executive session. So again, if anybody disagrees, we will not have executive session on tonight. All right, with those two edits, I will entertain. With those two edits, I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agenda.
Second.
Has been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. All right, so that means Dr. Thompson.
Thank you for making that adjustment. I have prepared an enrollment and attendance report for the board this evening that includes August of 2024 and August of 2025 data for each school. The first chart shows that our overall district enrollment has decreased by 267 students from the same time last year. However, you can also see that our enrollment has increased in several schools, including Grandview, Pinedale, Rapid Valley, Valley View, North Middle School, and both of our online schools. So even though our overall total district enrollment is decreasing, our enrollment in our elementary schools that are at or near capacity continue to grow as those areas of Rapid City are growing. And our current enrollment is very close to the number that we utilized as an estimate for budgeting purposes. This will obviously continue to change throughout the month and even the year due to mobility, but it gives you a snapshot of where we stand today. I want to spend more time on attendance this evening. The next two charts show attendance rates for each school for August of 2024 and August of 2025. You will note that the attendance rate at some of the schools have increased while others have decreased. But currently, all of our elementary schools have attendance rates above 90%, which is good, but it's very early in the school year. At this time, only North Middle School, Central High School, and our alternative programs have attendance rates that are below 90%. Our overall district attendance rate is 92.87%, which is well above 90%. However, that is 0.27% below last year's attendance rate at this time, which means that if we do not intervene, do something different, it's likely to drop below where it was last year and which below acceptable levels later in the school year. So I wanted to talk a little bit about why attendance is so important. Research shows that there's a direct relationship, a direct relationship between regular school attendance and student learning. There really is no substitute for a student being in school to receive instruction. The early years of elementary school are essential to developing literacy, numeracy, and social skills. And poor attendance during elementary school years widens those skill gaps and can prove very difficult to remediate later on. One thing that I want to stress is the statistic that shows a student who can't read on grade level by third grade is 4 times less likely to graduate by age 19 than a child who does read proficiently by that time. And when you compound that with poverty as an added factor, the below grade level student is actually 13 times less likely to graduate on time than their proficient or wealthier peers. In fact, research indicates that absenteeism at the middle school and high school levels can accurately predict high school dropout rates. So habits such as regular school attendance are extremely important. And missing school adds up very quickly. On the surface, missing a day or two of school here and there may not seem like much, but as you see in the graphic before you, if a student misses 2 days a month, that means they'll miss 20 days of school in a year. And in most schools, that will be about 30 hours of math instruction and 60 hours of reading and writing instruction. And it will be over 1 year of school by the time they hit graduation. Obviously, if you go to 4 days a month, that all doubles. A student misses 40 days a year, 60 hours of math instruction, 120 hours of reading and writing instruction in a year, and it's over 2 years of school by the time they hit graduation. Attendance is an extremely strong predictor of graduation. The strongest predictor of graduation is 8th grade English language arts performance. And the strongest predictor of 8th grade English arts performance is 3rd grade English language arts performance. And the strongest predictor of 3rd grade English language arts performance is attendance. The good news is that when students improve their attendance rates, they improve their academic prospects and their chances of graduating. I included the following graphic because it highlights the importance of attendance throughout a student's entire life. Elementary students with strong attendance read well by the end of 3rd grade. Middle school students with strong attendance pass important courses that are needed to be successful at high school. High school students with strong attendance stay on track for graduation. College students with strong attendance earn their degrees. And workers with strong attendance succeed in their jobs. Attendance is one factor that is important throughout an entire person's lifespan. And I asked to go before the sharing of the success because this really is kind of a prelude to what Dr. Conrad is going to speak about. But I would be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Mrs. Urban, I see your hand.
Thank you. Just real quick on the enrollment, historically, what do we see after Labor Day? Do we see that change significantly for the better?
I mean, it will go up and down. I think that it goes down typically, so.
After Labor Day? Thank you.
Mrs. Clapham.
One, I think, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, because we do still have the drop after 15 days. So we're not 15 days. So I think that's part of that formula of how many students we have, because we haven't gotten to the 15 days to drop those off. So I imagine that will have an impact on that. Thank you for this information. I guess kind of broadly, as you think about initiatives and like, would you see potentially, do you feel like focuses on any of these factors in our student pillar of strategic plan? And I guess I'm asking all three of you really. Would you see that as something as you see? I mean, this is obviously pretty strong weighty evidence of something like really focusing. We hear a lot of the terms of test scores, but specifically like these 8th grade and 3rd grade ELA, or I guess no one focus on something else.
I guess I'll go first. I think all of those things are components we need to look at. But if we don't have students in school, then we're not going to make a real difference on achievement. So I feel like we have to put a real concerted effort towards that.
We talked a lot about enrollment over the past several years, and the really confusing indicators that we have in our community in terms of what we would typically look at as growth signs that are actively happening in the community versus enrollment. I certainly don't pretend to be an expert regarding why this is happening and why it continues to happen. In my world, a lot of what I look at in terms of data is really black and white stuff, and trying to follow trend lines and trying to understand statistically why something is happening in these situations is really difficult. I think that there is something in every part of the of every pillar of the strategic plan that we could anchor back to in terms of providing the very best academic experience we can, and what exactly that means to our students and our families. Certainly the pillar I work with the most, the facilities portion of that, plays a significant role in the overall academic experience, and certainly I think in the enrollment aspect of that. So it's a really difficult problem. I think very hard to boil down to one or two or even a handful of factors as to what exactly is happening. I think I may oversimplify things at times, but my belief is we come here, we do the very best job we can, we try to provide the very best academic experience we can for students, and that trend will reverse, and things will change. So just some of my thoughts.
Ms. Stephenson.
I guess I feel like losing 267 students is kind of staggering. Like, that number is like a kind of a gut punch. And I feel like every year we're looking and we're like, oh, it happened again, you know, and nobody ever knows why. And oh, it's a national trend, and there are population trends, and there are housing trends, and when we talk about the strategic plan, I feel like attendance should be a goal of this district. Not attendance, I'm sorry, enrollment should be a goal of this district. We know that we're not losing kids in Rapid City. We know that people are moving here with their families. They're not enrolling in our schools, or they're pulling them out. And I would like for us as a board and us as a district administration to do more than wring our hands and be like, dang it happened again. We're really stuck here. You know, what's happening with enrollment in the Catholic schools and all the private schools? What's happening with, what can the state tell us about homeschooling? I know they don't have very good data. What's happening with enrollment in other places? I feel like, and I know what you're saying, Coy, that we just show up and we do the work and we do good work, but clearly we're missing something here. I can tell you as a parent in the district, I'm quite happy with my kids' experience. I've told you that, but we're missing something. We're losing lots and lots of kids. And I wonder if as a board, if we need to consider having enrollment as a goal in the strategic plan, recognizing that that puts a lot on you, but like every district, every employee in this district is responsible for enrollment. Our secretaries are, our teachers are, our counselors are, our administrators are, our board members are, we're all responsible. And everybody is just kind of saying, well, shoot, it happened again. And so that's, I just wanted to get that out there, and I asked that that be put on the Board of Education retreat agenda, but I see it's not, so I might try to change the agenda at the start of it to add that.
Mr. Swan,
I think this, I just got two questions. And one of them is related to, Christine's comments and kind of related to Jamie's. But, have we looked at where they're going? Is the Catholic school or the Rapid City Christian, are they gaining those 260 students? I mean, are they going back to the reservation? Is it, is it a poverty thing where they're just homeless and things aren't working out? Have we decided, have we made an effort to track that? I know it's kind of, Dr. Thompson's whatever. And I'm trying to see where we're tracking to see where they're going, you know what I mean? Because sometimes that's important to see where they're landing and what information why did they leave us? You know, it's kind of like an exit interview and kind of like what's going, so that's my first question. I don't know if anybody has an answer to that.
We did discuss that at our last DDL meeting, and my understanding is that it's very hard for us to track that information. We don't get information from the state about our homeschool students. There are some of the things we can track based on if we get a records request, but if we don't get that, we don't have another way to get the information. So it's something we're exploring, but it's going to take some time to figure out.
The second question I have, I guess, is for Coy, is what, with 267 students down, how much revenue are we losing? I know you did the budget projections close to this number, but realistically, how much revenue do we lose with 267 students?
Well, we don't really lose revenue, Walt, because we've structured the budget right around that 12,050 student mark. So our budget for the current year, I mean, again, given those numbers hold and don't take another drop prior to the actual count date, will not vary significantly from what we have in the budget for this year. I think what becomes concerning as you look from a year over year perspective is when you have those continual drops, what happens to state aid revenue over that time period. And so I have a really nice graphic for this that I should update. I think, maybe we're slightly ahead of the enrollment conversation, just given that we're still a ways out from the count date. But obviously, as we get closer to that date and understand the number, I'll update this graphic. But when you think about the idea that 5 or 7 years ago, the district was probably up in the $43 or $44 million neighborhood in terms of state aid, and this year will probably be down into the $35 to $36 million range. That's a significant amount of state aid revenue. Now, I won't rabbit hole on this yet. You're going to get a good dose of it here shortly, but there's obviously a lot of other factors that play into that. For example, the property tax revenue and a lot of those things. But it certainly is concerning, and certainly from the perspective of what's happening over a 5, 7, 10-year trend around that area, that resource has reduced significantly in that time period. However, again, from a strictly looking at it in this year perspective, as long as we hang close to that number, our budget for this year won't look drastically different than what it looks like right now. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, it does. Thank you, Coy.
Yes, sir.
Ms. Rafferty.
So listening to Dr. Thompson share her report,
I totally agree that we have to start at the elementary level as far as when we look at attendance. If we can get to those students at an early age and get the children who need help in academic support and get those children reading by the time they're in third grade, their chances of, wanting to come to school and grow and learn and is even greater for their, success as they get older. And Mr. Sassy, I agree with you. We have to, look at the academics and the support that the kids are getting in the classroom. Because when you look at a child who's in middle school or high school, most of them, sometimes they don't want to come to school because, they know they're behind and they're ashamed, and it's very sad, So I think, starting young and just getting to those kids in a positive way, teaching them how to read before third grade. So.
Dr. Strasser.
Just a couple thoughts regarding both enrollment and attendance. I think the actions that we take within our within our each of our pillars is always in mind with how do we best serve students? How do we uplift? How do we encourage? How do we build a culture that helps kids feel valued and feel part and engaged in our community? In our schools, and those are things that we're constantly working on. If you look at our student pillar, we're really focused on some direct questions about how students feel about being in school, and then throughout the student pillar, we're looking at behavior and safety and trying to make sure that the learning environment is what we expect it to be. When we do those things, that's when we're going to have success with the students that are in front of us. And that's, in my opinion, the most important thing. And I'm always discouraged when our numbers are down from what they were. But we have a responsibility to educate every student that shows up and that we are responsible for. That's our priority. I think when we do that well, and we continue to do that well, when we listen to our students, when we listen to our staff, again, it's a whole pillar, all 5 pillars come into play, whether it's, the facilities, the transportation side, all those things matter for looking at attendance, breaking down barriers, and getting our students the education that we all want them to have. So, Mr. Swan, you asked where are they going? You identified pretty much where they're going. I don't think the enrollment, to my knowledge, is significantly more at area schools as a result of us losing, having a drop in enrollment. But I haven't seen specific numbers yet. So just kind of going off of historical knowledge of enrollment. So there's a variety of things, and there's a lot of opportunities for kids and families to choose. So there is a competitive market for how we approach education. So that plays in, but I do think that we are working to educate our students, and we're very mindful of enrollment and attendance, and that's not discounted whether we shout it from the rooftops or not. We're just very I think honed in on how do we have the most impact in alignment with what you've directed in our strategic plan and our pillars.
All right, Mrs. Veit, I see your hand going up and down. Do you want the?
Sorry, I apologize for not being there in person. I'm actually under the weather, but Dr. Strasser did say everything correctly. And I do want to say with the attendance, we did have our district attendance committee meeting today, this afternoon. And that is one thing we're really taking a look at is the multi-tiered system of support. How do we have conversations differently with a kiddo who has chronic absenteeism versus a kid who's at warning, and making sure that we have our different leveled of supports within our building. Another thing that the committee is really doing is taking a look at our policy on does it meet the needs that we have. So I just wanted to reiterate that.
All right, thank you. Ms. Stephenson.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Strasser, for your comments. I don't want to be perceived that I am casting blame on anybody, because I'm not. I recognize, and I've heard from you and from everybody, that we know that this is we know that we're losing kids and that that's important and we need them. But like, this is our ultimate outcome of everything that we do. This is our ultimate outcome. How many kids are here this year compared to last year? And I think when I asked for like a more specific attendance driven goal, I want to prompt somebody to say, you know, actually our enrollment from the 5th graders last year to the 6th graders this year went down by 500 kids. What are we doing? That's an example, you know, or I want somebody to say, actually, it seems like we're losing people after freshman year. What are we doing about that? And a little bit more data that's like, we're not just trying district wide. We recognize that, you know, this group of 3rd graders from this area of town didn't come back to that school. And what happened, you know, and that data is there. I just don't, and I'm sure somebody's looking at it. I just think as a board level, this minus 267 is just, it makes me feel like, what's going on here? And I think there are ways to find out a little bit what's going on here. And maybe it'll help us get that number up. Maybe not, but I think we need to try.
All right, Mrs. Urban.
I was just looking at our facility master plan because co-op dug into this pretty deeply. And I think the one thing that's really clear is that it's multifaceted. And I think, you know, hopefully we could look at some different trends and try and glean something from that could keep our kids. But it's everything from a massive increase in homeschooling to politics on this side of the state to 10% decline in Pennington County birth rate. So I think there's all these things, but the reality is that it is specific to our school district because overall the state has seen an increase in public school enrollment. It's not huge, but it's increasing and we are not. So, I mean, hopefully we can dig into that deeper, but I think it's challenging because it's not just one thing.
All right. Anybody else on this specific part of Dr. Thompson's presentation and update? Okay, so Dr. Thompson, were you finished or do you have more? You're finished. Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much for that report. Any other questions for Dr. Thompson? Okay, at this time, we're having Sharing the Success Attendance Awareness Month. Awesome. And you want to make sure if that mic is on, it doesn't sound like it is right now.
There you go. It's green. Got it?
Sound on?
Testing.
Okay.
Got it? Okay. Well, good evening, Chair Carr, members of the board, Dr. Thompson, district leadership, and all in the community. I appreciate the time and the opportunity to present the proclamation recognizing September 25 as Attendance Awareness Month. But before I get into the proclamation, I would just like to echo that we've been doing a lot of work, front end work, both Ms. Veit and myself, really communicating with our building principals on the importance of attendance, as we all know, as far as the discussion that we've just had here. But we participated in a couple of podcasts already through our Public Schools Foundation, along with Bobby. Also participated in a podcast with our state's attorney's office. Our student Lewis is right here with us. He participated in that. But we also had our first district attendance meeting, as Ms. Veit had said, and both Ms. Rafferty and Ms. Moore were attending attended a portion of that meeting this morning or this afternoon, and it was really great. I'm very optimistic in the work that we're putting forth as far as really identifying those factors of attendance issues that we have here at our district and coming up with a plan, reviewing our policies and so on, just so we can address the concern, because as the discussion shows here, there is a concern. Okay, so we're putting a lot of work into that. And so I'm really excited about that. But also, as we go throughout the month of September, we had a attendance awareness poster campaign. All of our elementary buildings were participating in that. We had a lot of posters arrive late this afternoon, so we were unable to post everything up here in the room for you to take a look at. But we have a few that are present here. But the goal for our proclamation is here today, ready for tomorrow. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have those posters available for your viewing, but also through social media, working with Bobby, we'll get all of that out to you as well. Okay. Also, one area too, towards the middle of the month, we are going to be participating in the Pumpkin Festival downtown, September 20th, where we're going to be promoting attendance and the importance of attendance. So anyone in here, you're welcome to come down and join us. We have a table or a tent set up for us, but we're going to re-recruit our students and celebrate them. So whenever they come across, taking a look at all their pumpkins and so on. But as I stated, September 2025 is Attendance Awareness Month, and this is nationwide. So I'd like to read a proclamation stating that Rapid City Area Schools is in support of Attendance Awareness Month. It's a little lengthy here, so give me a few minutes to read through this, okay? But proclamation of September 2025 is Attendance Awareness Month, whereas chronic absence may be the single biggest barrier to improving education in our country, making good attendance crucial to nurturing an educated and healthy next generation with the skills needed for a strong economy. Whereas students and families are more likely to show up and engage when there are positive conditions for learning at school, including physical and emotional health and safety, a sense of belonging, connection, and support, academic challenges and engagement in adults and peers with social emotional competency. Whereas reducing chronic absenteeism, missing 10% or more of school for any reason, requires a comprehensive approach that starts with prevention and early intervention, including developing routines and trusting relationships that create a sense of belonging rather than responding with punitive action, which research finds is not particularly effective. Whereas improving attendance and engagement takes schools, families, elected leaders, and other community partners working together to rebuild regular and trusting communications and to identify and address barriers to being in school. And whereas taking attendance daily in a caring, consistent manner is essential to identifying when students begin to miss too much school and for noticing as soon as possible when students are starting to miss too much school and to engage students and families with needed support and resources. Whereas supporting the health and well-being of the school community and sending the message that students should avoid missing school for minor symptoms of illness is essential to reestablishing daily attendance routines. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Rapid City Area Schools stands with the nation in recognizing September as Attendance Awareness Month. We hereby commit to focusing on reducing absenteeism and addressing the factors that cause students to miss school in order to ensure that all children have an opportunity to learn, grow, and thrive academically, emotionally, and socially. We recognize that we must work together to build an engaging school environment that motivates attendance and sends the message that learning matters. As a district, our commitment is clear. We will support to partner with families and community organizations to support student attendance. We will use attendance data not just for numbers, but as a tool to intervene early and provide support when students begin to struggle. And most importantly, we will remind students and family that every day matters because each day in school is an opportunity to learn, connect, and grow. So thank you for your support as we observe Attendance Awareness Month. So,
Right.
Thank you.
Very much. Board members, any questions or comments? All right. All right, Ms. Rafferty.
So, Mrs. Moore and myself were at the meeting today, and it was really nice to see everybody, all the people from different schools, administrators, just different teams there, all working together and from building to building, just coming up with strategies on how, how to improve attendance. And they really genuinely, they just really care about the kids. And I want to thank you. And I'm going to probably butcher a kid's last name, so I'm not even going to try to pronounce it, but I just really appreciate all the work that you guys are doing, and I think we can get there. We just have to keep working.
We'll
Thank
keep
you.
working. Thank you.
Ms. Stephenson.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. I'm really happy that the district is gathering people, formed this committee, and is working specifically to address attendance. I also look forward to hearing, and I know Kit has said that she would let us know throughout the year what initiatives seem to be working, how you've pivoted to help increase enrollment, and look forward to hearing that.
Any other questions? All right, seeing no hands, thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
All right, we have a bit of a lull. Our next person am I correct? We didn't have any open forum? Okay. So our next person is Coy, who just stepped out. So I will make an executive decision. We'll go to item 9, board members' updates from the recent Associated School Board of South Dakota Conference. All right, so those of us that went, Ms. Rafferty, Ms. Clapham, myself, and Ms. Urban, who wants to go first? All right, Ms. Clapham, you spoke first, so you're up first.
I will be completely transparent in that beginning school with adapting with a child who is not excessively mobile has taken a lot of time in my schedule. So normally I would have a little PowerPoint, and I did not get that far this time. But just, I think some high points for me. One, I always, I feel like kind of a nerd, like conferences excite me, but it really, like, the energy and having hundreds of people who care about kids and care about public education is just always, it sort of reinvigorates you when you're kind of feeling drugged down and deep down. And so it was a really good conference. I think the two topics that I felt like really sparked my interest and that I'd like to see a little bit more like in the district. There were 2 AI presentations that I went to, and one of them was called AI as a Student's Therapist. And this one just, wow, that 50% of students are using some sort of AI character or tool like a therapist. They will talk to the AI, and the problem is, of course, the algorithm is taught to basically, it's not taught to really be a therapist. It's taught to make them feel good, not necessarily address. And so this was just mind blowing to me that this is even a thing, and apparently a very common thing. And so I think important for just our staff to just even be aware of this existing, for families and parents to understand that, to explain to our kids, like, a chatbot is not the same as a qualified therapist. And the chatbot will tell you, actually, they showed us an example. You'll say, are you a certified clinician? And it'll say yes back to them. And so then you're just fed into this loop of and so it really was like, that part of AI was kind of scary, but just seeing what we need to learn and understand, and what we as a district, as parents, and how thinking of ways that we can educate parents on that this exists, that this is out there, how we can tell our students, like, hey, we have counselors, we have the Gab app, we have other outlets and ways to actually reach qualified, skilled people to do this. So that one was definitely very interesting. There also are AI companions that basically students interact with as friends as opposed to real people as well. So that was another thing that kind of blew my mind. And again, just educating and understanding that this is out there and being aware to keep on the lookout for with your children, with our students. So that's that one they said was very interesting. And in the end, it talked a lot about information literacy and how do we as a society educate and train people to help them understand how AI works and what its limitations are. And so that one was a really good one, but said also a little scary, but gave us kind of a platform. On the flip side, the next AI was about how AI can actually assist specifically, this one specifically for special ed teachers with burnout. And it demonstrated how you can upload and you have to redact private information, but how basically you can build a student's profile and they're based on their assessments and learning and how it can help a special ed teacher write goals, write IEPs that normally take 3, 4, 5, 6 hours. And they said for one special ed teacher, it cut out 6 to 8 hours of workload a week. And when we have our special ed staff that is absolutely overwhelmed with caseloads that are considerably larger than we would like them to have, but due to staff shortages. And so how, for me, this very much looked at a way to, how do we support our staff? We know our staff is struggling. We know our staff has heavy caseloads that are difficult to manage. We know that we lose staff due to burnout. And so this was a really interesting way to look at that. And it showed different platforms, but I think another thing that we could look into as a district and help educate our staff, see if there are staff, if there is an interest to learn and to integrate this into their daily life and daily work to possibly decrease that workload. And the last one that I felt very pertinent is about early childhood education. And I am extremely passionate about early childhood education. South Dakota is one of 6 states that does not have preschool standards or any state funding for preschool. One of 6 states. It makes me frustrated every time I hear it. And it's early childhood is when the developing brain is most open to influence. And it just really discussed that in 2022, 70% of children in South Dakota under 5 were in poverty. We know, we just talked about what that leads to, how those students are going to be 13 times more likely not to graduate high school. And I think the best example, he said as a rancher, he said, so if you just throw corn out on the ground, you don't fertilize it, you don't water it, you don't do anything, and you expect 5 months later for something to happen. So the most vulnerable time is when those seeds are exposed. He said children are exactly the same. And so we are leaving by having no real support outside of with our students and IEPs and early intervention, but not having early education. We are leaving those kids at the most vulnerable time with the least intervention. And what does that lead us to in the future? And so it really continued to ignite my passion to look at, like, how do we lobby? Who do we get to listen about the importance of early education and how we can incorporate that into South Dakota public schools? So it was I said, I really would like to learn more and see how the district could possibly integrate or even just learn more about AI and information literacy and what we could do and how we could lobby in groups to really get more emphasis on early education. That those were my takeaways from the weekend.
Mrs. Urban, is your hand up to go next?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. Ms. Stephenson, you had a. Okay, all right, Mrs. Urban.
I thought the AI stuff was pretty interesting as well. But we had a keynote speaker. His name is Josh Cowan. He is running for House, I believe, in Michigan. And he's an outspoken opponent of vouchers. And he presented some information that was pretty interesting. One of the things that he talked a lot about was the underwhelming academic results that are worse than many other experiments and even worse than COVID-19 outcomes. So he gave a number of examples, but I thought that was really interesting. He also said that they disproportionately benefit wealthier families, that roughly 70% of voucher recipients in other states are already attending private schools. So it's not like we are getting this voucher program because we think the public schools are terrible and we want to divert money and give these people an option to leave. Those aren't the people that are leaving for the most part. It's people that they've already left and they're going to private schools. And he emphasized that it does divert public funds and that this experiment over a number of years has shown just how much fraud and mismanagement there is in these programs. So that was kind of, it was a timely keynote speech, just given that we've been talking a lot about vouchers and we'll probably be talking about them again this session.
Rafferty?
So I also had a chance to attend the AI sessions, which you guys already heard, and the keynote speaker. As a new board member, I also attended the very first day. I left a day earlier so that I could attend a session for new school board members. And it was just an introduction of, what it's going to be like being on the school board. And, and I found that very valuable because, I want to represent my area and I just want to make sure I do my research. And I just thought that going to the conference, I'm really glad that I went because I just learned so much attending these different sessions. But I probably have to say the one that really alarmed me the most was the AI session. It was a pretty scary session to hear some of the things that is actually happening to our children right now. So.
All right, thank you. Mrs. Urban, okay, no problem. All right, I attended several session classes. The first one I went to on day one was SPED 101 for board members, and it heightened my my understanding of the work that the SPED department does and how the SPED department was set up. And so I came away with an more of an appreciation of the work that that department does. I went to a session called Science of Reading, and I was fascinated with that session because this change is based on real science. It's based on how the brain works and how the brain understand and how you teach the brain. And one of the fascinating things is that now they're trending towards students understanding the sound first and then what letter goes with that sound. Where when I was growing up, you saw the letter F and you were asked, what sound does the letter F make? And so again, just the study that they did about our brains and how we're changing to that was very fascinating to me. One of the other sessions I went to was Embracing the Continuous Improvement Journey. And that session was led by Douglas Superintendent Kevin Case. And I was just so, I won't use the word jealous or envy, but it was just interesting how they had targeted plans, targeted ways to change the culture of the Douglas school system. And one of the things that I've said, and we all know, that a district this size doesn't change on a dime. It's more like a cruise ship than a speedboat. And so sometimes you don't feel that change is happening. But again, his presentation that over the case of years and getting buy-in with staff and the board has helped them change the culture of that system. So I'm glad I went, and I always come back with more information than I had before. So, Ms. Stephenson.
Thanks. I just wanted to follow up on the AI discussion and ask you four who went to the sessions and perhaps anybody else, do you think that we need to modify our AI policy on a more regular basis? It seems, and for background, I just read a long essay in the New York Times from these researchers who for the last 2 years, 1,000 days since ChatGPT 4 came out, they've been trying to promote in academia a more responsible use of AI. And they just came out on the 1000th day, these researchers, and they said, actually, we don't think it's possible. We are no longer promoting responsible use of AI. And the university level, we have to do more one-on-one assessments. So that's different. But it just strikes me, and I don't know if anybody talked about this, like, should we be updating our policy on AI more regularly? Are we happy? Is that something as a board we want to direct? I don't know.
So I think for me, what I took away part of it is, and I asked the presenter about this, is yes, a policy is needed, but I feel like cart before horse, like I think we need more information literacy to start with. Like that's part of the problem. We're creating a policy that we don't, I'm just gonna be really blunt. We don't actually know what we're doing. Like that's like, we don't know enough, I think. And I think it's like this scary big bad wolf because we don't know enough. And so I kind of think like, will the policy need to be adapted? Absolutely. But I think and I don't know how it trickles down or up like board, then staff, I think more literacy on the matter has to happen first for us before we really flesh out a policy. Because I think we're going to be changing that policy and not that it's obviously it changes fast. But I think my desire in coming out of those classes and Katie and Angela, but is that we just don't have enough information literacy anyway. And so I think we're jumping to conclusions or decisions without the background. So I would advocate for more information literacy prior to restructuring the policy.
For the board, more information?
I think both for the board and for staff, because I think originally the policy, some of it came from, well, what does staff feel? But I think staff didn't really necessarily know. And I'm not saying that as like an indictment at all. I'm just saying, I think we're working a lot with a small amount of information. And so I think it's a both, because I think with policies like that, we need staff, like we need their help and we need their feedback, but I think they have to have more information too before we really go there. And that's one person speaking by one, but that's what I see.
I would have to agree with Jamie. we're just now hearing a lot about this. I think this is something that we probably should do some more research and gather as much information as possible before, making any decisions.
Any input, Ms. Urban? I didn't go to the class, so. Yeah, okay. All right, Mr. Swan.
I just asked ChatGPT, how regular should a school board update an artificial intelligence? The frequency in which a school board should update artificial intelligence depends on several factors, including how AI is being used, legal and ethical consideration, the pace of technological and regulatory change. However, there are general guidelines. So and then it offers a whole bunch of general guidelines. So the answer to our question may even be an AI, you know what I mean? And that's, that's how it is being used. You know what I mean? Is just, this is how quickly that we do probably need to put it on a regularity schedule, just to keep up. Because it's going to change and everything else is going to change. So just an example. Thank you.
Ms. Clapham?
I just one last thought, kind of thinking on the fly, Christine. I think, and I'm like, wave my magic wand in perfect world. I think having it as part of professional development would be huge. I recognize that's a big ask. As I'm looking at that, that's a big ask. I recognize, but I think honestly, I think that's a direction that would be ideal in a perfect world.
Okay, anybody else? Any questions? All right, thank you, board, and thank you for those reports. At this time, Mr. Sassy, your report.
Thank you, President Carr. One moment here. Whoops, not what I meant to do. Okay, thank you, sir. Would like to take a few minutes to talk through a financial review of fiscal year 2025 with the board. Of course, our fiscal year ends on June 30th. So we just ended the fiscal year here about 2 months ago. It takes a solid couple of months of pulling all that data together, ensuring that all the loose ends are tied up from the end of the fiscal year, for us to be able to present a really solid idea of what the end of the fiscal year look like. So this will be made up really of two different sources of information: budgetary information from our internal system, Skyward, and then we're going to take a look at some key annual report information. Of course, the annual report being a report that we file on a yearly basis with the South Dakota Department of Education, a really thorough aggregation of all of our financial data. You'll see some of the different pieces specifically that the state looks for in this financial information. And they use it for a ton of different purposes, including a lot of the reporting that they do back up to the federal Department of Ed and federal government. So some of the key information there. So I promised Dr. Strasser I would get through this in 10 minutes, so I'm going to go fairly quickly, but certainly always open to any questions you have, whether you want to stop me now or wait till the end. So fiscal year 2025, from the big picture perspective, we budgeted $218 million in revenue. We received $207.6 million. For about a 95% overall percentage received. On the expenditure side, again, budgeted $218 million, spent about $193 million for a total percentage spend of about 89%. What we're going to do tonight is really dig into the two big funds, the general fund, the capital outlay fund, and you'll see very specifically where some of these figures come from in terms of the revenue and expenditure side. So first, we're going to take a look at the general fund. Of course, general fund being the largest single fund of the district, the major operating fund, and overall completely dictates the financial health of the district. So general fund this year, in fiscal year 25, we budgeted $110.4 million. We spent about $105.8 million for a percentage spent of 96%. Which is about $4.6 million in unexpended balance. Now, hopefully, this is the last time that you all will ever have to hear me say this. To really get a look at true general fund expenditures, we have to back out the federal programs from all those figures. Not because they aren't important and not because they don't do some really good things in our system, but because those are all what we call self-contained grants, meaning that they're going to balance themselves out. The amount of revenue they bring in should offset all of the expenditures, and they tend to blur the picture of what's happening at the foundational level of our general fund. So when we go in and we pull all those expenses out and we put them to the side, what we see in terms of true general fund expenditures are that we budgeted $96.7 million and we spent $96.1 million, which is about 99.4%. With a $553,000 unexpended balance. So when we back that out and we look at true general fund expenditures, we can see we were really close in terms of our budgeting. Our budgeting was very accurate, spending at 99%. If we get really nerdy in terms of the financial aspects of this, you'll hear different theories from different folks on exactly where you should aim in terms of your budget utilization. I always think that we are not a for-profit business. We should be as accurate as possible in our budgeting so that we know exactly where our money is going, what we have to spend, what we have to move into compensation, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm pleased to see us being that accurate on the general fund side. I think that's a good indicator of having a good budgetary process. A few areas of note. The instruction side, which between elementary, middle, and senior instruction makes up about 50.6 million of the total expenditures that we see. Elementary was 97.5%, middle school 102, and senior high 102. So overall about 101%. So again, really accurate in terms of instruction and what that means to our overall system. On the support service side, this is generally over the last several years where we've seen the underspending happen. Not so much at the instructional level, more at the support service level. Overall, we were about 93% or about $2.4 million under budget. Just to point out a few different areas, these are some of the larger spending areas on the support service side. Custodial was 96%, about $900,000 under budget. Pupil transportation was actually overspent by 7%, about $96,000 over budget. And then care and upkeep of grounds significantly underspent, 71%, about $432,000 under budget. So those are just a few areas of note I picked out of the support service side just to give you an idea of what that looked like. When we look at the breakdown of general fund expenses, first by function, we see the instructional side making up about 54% of overall expenditures, support services at 42.4%, and then co-curricular at about 3.6%. So that's a fairly typical breakdown. Instruction, a little more significant this year. I believe last year we were right in the 52% range, so slight increase in instruction, but that's a typical breakdown of what we would see. If we look at that breakdown by objects, so this is specifically the categories in which the expenditures landed. We see salaries making up 66%, benefits another 19%. Purchase services at 9%, supplies at 3.2%, and then other, which is primarily our insurance premiums, at about 2.7%. So again, fairly typical breakdown of what we would see, about that 86% spent between salaries and benefits, and then the rest made up of those various categories. So pretty typical spending breakdown. On the revenue side, budgeted $109.6 million. Received a $110.9 million, which is about 101.2%. We were over revenue budget by 1.3 million. So this is a good thing. We want to be over budget on the revenue side. That's great. Again, we have to, because of the presence of those federal programs, back those out if we want to look at true general fund revenues. And when we do, we see we budgeted 94.9. We received 100.6, meaning that we received 106% of our budget, or 5.7 million over budget. That can get confusing, especially with a lot of those federal programs present. The major difference between the two is that generally the federal programs, as they're pulled back in, include carryover, meaning that they're somewhat inflated in terms of what they're actually going to look like for that year. Again, as we back those away and we look at true general fund revenues, we see that we were significantly over budget. So a few areas of note here. On the property tax side, we landed at about 105%, or about $2.9 million over. What gets tricky in terms of projecting property taxes, remember that we're essentially trying to smush 2 years of tax revenue together, because taxes run on the calendar year. Our district runs a fiscal year that's exactly opposite of that. So when we look at the year in advance that we're projecting, it can get a little tricky. And so we had a particularly favorable year in terms of tax revenue in relation to our projections. So we landed at 105% of where we believed we were going to be. Speaking of areas difficult to project, the county sources, which is primarily what we call revenue in lieu of, which is really in terms of revenue that we are receiving from TIF properties, TIF areas around our community. We came in at 1,108%, or about 2.5 million over. The difficulty here is we usually just throw a figure in there. The figure that we tend to stick to is 250,000. And that's because we really don't have any way of projecting what that's actually going to look like. It's sort of a, we get what we get when we get it type situation. So this year, there were some TIF revenues that came off the books that obviously we're increasing that significantly. That's not what that's going to look like every single year, obviously, which is why we always project low. On the state aid side, we landed at about 97% of our projection, about 1.2 million under where we were going to be. All of that goes directly back to our enrollment conversation that we just had a few minutes ago. And the idea that as Mr. Swan asked the question about what happens when we are under what our projection is for enrollment, that's exactly what happens. So we projected enrollment here, it came in here, we end up under budget essentially. Obviously, in this situation, overall revenue was in a good place. Because our fund ended in a surplus state, obviously, we did not use any capital outlay flexibility or reserve funds. If we look at general fund revenue categorically broken down, local sources or property tax revenue, we see about 52%, county at about 3.3%, state at about 36%, and federal at about 9.3%. Again, fairly typical breakdown. The last couple of years, we've actually seen that local piece at a little higher, right in that 53, 54% range. Obviously, the in lieu of money coming in from the county influenced that, and so we saw that back down a little bit this year. Again, really typical breakdown. I'll pause really quickly. Any questions around the general fund before moving on to capital outlay? Yes, ma'am,
Can I
please.
ask a question?
Yes.
So I know I get sort of anxious when we see the, how much our income is over but so I know that capital outlay, there are laws that tell us how much we can move or flex. Are there any law statutes as far as moving general fund into capital outlay? Like, is there a limit to that? Can we do that whenever we want to?
Yes, so certainly you can supplement capital outlay with general fund money. Typically, that's not the way that you see those arrows pointing, but you can do it as a district. To my knowledge, there is not a limit because you're not restricted in terms of how you use general fund money. It's a much more open pot of money in terms of its usage, whereas in reverse, capital outlay moving to general fund, much more restricted uses for capital outlay in terms of moving it over to the general fund. So no, I don't believe that to my knowledge, and I'll double check on this, that there is a restriction around what you could supplement in terms of general fund to capital outlay. Good question. Okay, moving into capital outlay. Capital outlay, as you all are aware, over the last several years has been a bit of a wild, wild west situation. We've had the presence, obviously, of the ESSER funds, the South Middle School project that has inflated and given us a difficult picture to really try to break down in terms of what's actually happening in the capital outlay fund. That is present again this year. Hopefully this year is the last year that we have to really back things up and take a look at that, although we'd love to keep building buildings and have to pull that out. However, this year we budgeted $47.9 million in capital outlay expenditures. We spent 31.2, which is about 65% or about $16 million in an unexpended balance. A few reasons for this. First of all, in the facilities acquisitions portion of the budget, we were underspent by about $7.3 million. That was really purely an error in what exactly we had left. We doubled up some expenses on South Middle School in terms of what we had left as an overall amount for the project, which inflated the budget a bit and ultimately looks underspent, but truly is not an underspent amount. On the instruction side, this is primarily curriculum adoptions. As you all are aware, we halted some adoptions. I think that the choice was to move some of those down the road. That category ended up underspent by $3.7 million. On the technology side, we were underspent by about $532,000, and then construction services underspent by about $3.2 million. The difficulty here is that does not necessarily constitute savings. We talked about this over the last several years. All of that money is earmarked. It does not necessarily mean that we had true savings on those projects or purchases or whatever. Really what it means is we're still in various stages of completion. So that money is going to continue to stay earmarked for that project, that purchase, whatever the case may be. So it appears like we added a whole bunch of money into the capital outlay fund, and in reality, we did not. That money is just at various stages of being spent at this point.
Ms. Stephenson, you have a question?
Yeah, just, it does seem you know, if I think you tried to say this, but I'm gonna ask it again. If I'm the public, I might say, oh, well, then they've got 16.9 million to put, you know, that's a third of a school. That looks great. Do you, recognizing that some of the expenses that you expected to pay last year might be on this year's budget, do you adjust this year's budget then? Will this year's budget go up in capital outlay because some of this 16.9 that we were over is delayed until this year?
Yeah, so essentially what we would do is at the end of the fiscal year at this point, we'll come back, we'll take a look at, for example, on the facility side, all the projects that are still in play that were carryovers from the previous year. We will determine what the amount we're going to need to finalize those projects and or push them further into their progression. And we'll determine if we need to add to the budget, if we do, what exact amount we need to add. And then ultimately we would pull that from cash reserve, because technically that's what it looks like right now, is that we're adding cash to the reserve, which from a mechanical standpoint we are. However, it's sort of like putting money in your personal savings account to make payments on a car or buy a car at a later date or a example like that. So as we take a look at how that year wrapped up and what we have left, we'll amend the budget as necessary to make sure that we have those projects finished.
Is there any amount of this? Because I feel like at facilities committee meetings, we've heard a lot of like, oh, we got more bids than we thought and they were lower than we thought.
Yeah.
Is there any amount of last year's expenditures that's just lower because
Saving.
prices are coming
Yeah,
down?
certainly,
Or
certainly,
we've
yeah.
achieved savings?
Yeah, that is, and you'll see that as we talk through some of the
Oh, okay.
cash. I think, I'll
Okay.
come back to that.
Ms. Urban?
Maybe this is what Jamie was getting at, but with that 2.5 million that we got in TIF funds, we can just push that right over to capital outlay and could theoretically use that for a project, a facility project, right?
Yes, and as you'll see here in just a minute, there's other factors that are contributing to this too, but typically what you will see is if the general fund benefited from it and it's property tax related, then the capital outlay fund and the special education fund probably benefited as well. So you're gonna see that right here in the revenue side of this as well. That again, county sources way over budget, 10,000%. So we were a million over. Essentially, we do the same thing in capital outlay where we stick in a figure not knowing exactly what that's going to look like. And so what happens when those tax proceeds run in is that they go to all the different funds categorically that they're broken down to. So we had a very similar situation in capital outlay. So speaking of which, on the revenue side, we budgeted 47.9 million. We received 40.1. That looks like then an 84% percentage received and under by 7.8. Difficult picture to try to pull apart and truly understand what happened there. We had $14 million scheduled as incoming. That was from the South Middle School capital outlay certificate issuance a couple years ago. We mistakenly pulled that in as revenue coming in when in actuality it should have been a transfer over from reserve. So again, that's the inflated aspect of that playing out on the revenue side. When we pull all that away and we look at true capital outlay revenues, we budgeted 30.9, we received 40.1, which is 130% or being over by about 9.2 million. Again, we see a lot of the same factors playing themselves out on the revenue side as the general fund. Property taxes over by 107% or about 2 million over. We also, of course, have to account for the sale of the surplus property that the district engaged in, which is a significant amount of money at 5.2 million. And so combine that with then that county side, and that's where we see the specific areas of over budgeting on the revenue side coming into play. Again, when we look at capital outlay revenue breakdown, local 84%, county 2.6, Federal is essentially 0, and then other being 13.2. Some of these strange factors heavily influence this. The surplus property sale is falling into this other category, which is making it look significantly larger than it would in previous years. Again, that county in lieu of revenue, that is not what that would typically look like. So normally this breakdown would be about 95% local. This year, that total local amount is back down a bit because of the presence of some of those other unique factors that we have happening. But overall, a fairly typical revenue breakdown. Okay, getting somewhat back to your question here, Christine, I think when we look at cash positions in our major funds, we see, Corey, did you take my, oh, here we go. Thought Corey stole it. From fiscal year 21 to 25, you'll see the cash levels there. We've seen uptick in general fund cash over the last several years. This year at about 22.6 million, end of fiscal year 25, about 22.6 million. Capital outlay, again, we've seen increase in cash levels, actually cash coming down from year to year to about 66 million. Again, a lot of that is planned as we had the 15 million from the South Middle School certificate that's now exiting the system because we have finished that project. That cash level is starting to come downward. On the special education side, didn't talk a ton about special ed. I can certainly go into that if you'd like me to. However, we see that finally starting to level out. I think our expenditures and our revenue starting to level out. We talked about that issue at length. So starting to see that cash reserve level evening out, and then hopefully starting to pull down over the next several years to a point where we're below the cash reserve limit. Student nutrition took a bit of a dip in terms of cash down to about the $1.3 million range. And then health insurance, about a $600,000 decrease down to that 8.8 range. So it's really, again, a lot of moving pieces in this, but back to your question, Christine, you'll see that obviously we reduce cash over the course of the year in terms of capital outlay cash. So again, it's hard to look at revenues versus expenditures and really get an idea of what's going to happen with your cash from a year over year perspective. However, we are in a really good position in terms of cash levels in all of our funds and feel very comfortable with where we're at. These are just a few quick slides from the annual report. The state has a major focus on cash balance. Speaking of all of this, they want to see cash at very specific levels. And so one of the items of information that we submit to them is a cash balance survey. Not a lot to note here. I do find it interesting. You'll see that we follow these very specific patterns in terms of our cash, where we dwindle downwards from the beginning of the fiscal year. And then in November, we saw our first large property tax payment. Cash levels bounce back up, dwindle back down. And then again in May, we see another large tax payment and we see cash come back up. You'll see that depicted. This is part 2 of that report. Again, dwindle down, spike back up, dwindle down, spike back up. And you see that in really all the major funds. But overall, in a very good spot in terms of cash balance, with the exception of SPED. Again, that's a challenging situation that hopefully we're starting to turn the corner on. Some teacher compensation data included back to fiscal year 2020, just so you could see some of the trends. Total FTE in terms of what the state deems a instructional staff. We see total FTE of 795, just a small reduction from last year of 799. Total compensation for that group, 57.9 million. Average compensation increasing to 74,525. So I just made a quick note. Movement from fiscal years 23 to 24, we saw a 5.5% increase in average teacher compensation. Moving from 24 to 25, another 2.8%. 25 to 26, again, giving some of the significant movement that we made during negotiations last year, I think we'll see that probably land in the 6 to 7% range. So we would be in the 14 to 15% range over a 3-year period, which is not perfect. However, moving in a good direction in terms of teacher compensation.
Ms.
Can I,
Stephenson?
Yeah, please.
just one quick question?
Yeah, absolutely.
The state, though, doesn't count teacher compensation, right? They're talking salary for accountability with the state.
They still do. So average compensation still includes the benefit aspect as well. That is included into total compensation. So as you recall, there were several bills that contemplated the idea of removing the benefit side of that and looking specifically only at the salary portion. Those never made it through the process, and in the measurement is still total compensation.
Okay, so
Yep.
this is the number the state cares about.
Yes, exactly. You're correct. Yes, ma'am. And then lastly, the annual report long-term debt survey. So again, this is a big piece of information for the state in terms of what they collect. Won't go too into depth. This lists all the district's outstanding debt, the principal paid in previous years, interest paid in previous years, current years, and then ultimately the outstanding. So as you can see, outstanding as of last fiscal, the district had about 42.25 million in debt. The most recent being, again, the South Middle School certificate issued for the finalization of South Middle School at that 3.25. As we, again, move into the last half of this decade, we see a lot of these starting to really significantly drop off, starting with these two, the QZAB and QSCAB bonds. Those will drop off in the next 2 years. And then a lot of this older debt starts to drop off very rapidly as we move towards 2030. So 2030, the only amount that the district would have remaining would be this 13.25, which at that point in time will be down in about the $9 million range, about $1 million a year in debt service. So it appears like a heavy debt load right now, and it is a heavy debt load, but again, we're getting into the later stages of amortization on a lot of that, and we'll start to see it fall off really rapidly. And that is my last slide, President Carr. So happy to answer any questions that the board may have.
All right. Board, any questions, comments about Mr. Sass's report?
So that, the cash balance
Let
is,
it go. I don't see your hand.
oh, I'm sorry. Falling asleep at the wheel. The cash balance report, does the state request that like yearly, quarterly? How often do they?
Yeah, so we submit that on a yearly basis. They look at it from a couple different lenses. They look at it from a monthly perspective, although there is not a monthly requirement. So it's not if you pop over the amount in a month, you're penalized. They're looking at it from a year-end perspective. But it's certainly a focus on the state side and on the legislative side. So that report actually came out of a legislative request, wanting to really understand what most districts were keeping on hand in terms of cash, especially around the general fund and capital outlay side. So interesting report. I think sometimes maybe doesn't tell the story it needs to tell, and some of the challenges around, again, cash management and some of those things that districts have. But they want the report, so we give them the report.
Anybody else? Oh,
Yes.
I just don't know the QZAB and QSCAB.
Yeah.
Which is an awful name. Those are bonds that we've issued that we aren't going to pay interest on. So come
Yeah.
11/1/2029, we're just going to write a $3 million check.
Yes. So yes, and then no. So what the amortization looks like on those particular bonds is they go into what we call a sinking fund. So we are paying a no interest payment on those every single year. It goes into what's called a sinking fund that is sitting with another bank based on the institution that the investor chose. And then at the end of that period, they will pull everything that's sitting over in that sinking fund to completely pay off the bond. The major benefit for the investor is they pull that money into that sinking fund and they keep any of the interest earned as it sits there. So there's sort of a dual investment. Obviously great on behalf of the district because it's a lending mechanism that we paid zero interest on, which is fantastic. And some benefit for the investor.
But then
as
the
well.
amount isn't a true amount then. I mean, if we've been paying annually 3 million on that.
No. It's just so it's $374,111 per year. So it's just the amount of what would be necessary over that. I think it was a 20-year amortization. So at the end of the day, it's only $3 million or $4 million, whatever the amount is. So it's basically the principal amount divided by the amortization period, and that's what the district pays every year.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
All right, anyone else? All right, seeing no hands, thank you, Mr. Sassy.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, board.
This time we have no conflict of interest. I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed agreements.
So moved.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed agreements. Any discussion? Okay, seeing no discussion, all in favor of approving the proposed agreements signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. All right, approval of proposed consent agenda. Any item a board member would like to pull? All right, seeing none, I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed consent agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the proposed consent agenda. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. Motion carries. Okay, items for board information. Any committee reports? Mrs. Urban.
There's a lot going on in facilities, but there are a couple of projects that I think are pretty exciting. We've solicited proposals from contractors on a couple of different projects. One is the Grandview HVAC. So Grandview is going to get air conditioning at some point soon. I think next year is when we're going to put that in. And then Stevens, this was a surprise to me, and I think it's going to be everyone's gonna be really happy about this because we've been hearing about the Fine Arts Department for a very long time. And we learned that they are going to get a new orchestra room, some new storage in the fine arts area. In addition, they are going to get an upgrade in the freshman lunchroom. And then it says air handling unit replacement in some of the older parts of the building. So a lot happening for Stevens, and the construction is planned to begin next summer. So we have a number of contractors that are interested, so that's also really helpful for us. Rapid Valley design update, that's moving right along. Again, we've had a number of contractors walk through. We got to see a little bit of what a proposal could look like for the design, and it's really exciting, and it's going to add a lot of space onto Rapid Valley. Let's see. We talked about the survey and ultimately decided to really have more conversation at our board retreat next week. But there are lots of ideas and more to come on that. And Christine, anything else you want to add?
No, I I did want to note that the Rapid Valley design, that the price tag may increase, that the district pays for this expansion and remodel potentially to around 15 million. We don't know that for sure, but a little bit more than we expected to pay. What we learned from the discussion is we have to put in a sprinkler system, which is good and correct, and now's the time to do it. We learned that we're updating HVAC, which is good and correct, and now's the time to do it. And then maybe there'll be ceiling tiles, and that's also, now's the time to do it. But we had significant discussion about, or well, an overview, not a significant discussion, just about how it's hard to not want to do everything when you are tearing up a building. And so just a heads up that the price may increase slightly more than we were expecting.
Okay, board, any questions for that report? Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Urban. Mrs. Clapham.
Just quick update. So policy, we had one meeting. Policy helps us sort of restructure the format, which I think is really beneficial. So now policy is going to have the people most directly involved in the policy at the meeting. What was happening before was kind of, it was sent, then we couldn't ask them a question directly, and then it went back and forth and email, and it took 4 months because we weren't all in the same room. And so that I thought that it was really beneficial. President Carr was also present. So I think that format really helped and helps us have a greater understanding of the wording, the reasoning for bringing a policy change or for bringing a new policy. So as a board member, I feel like it helps us stay a lot more informed. So that's an update on that. And as far as community outreach, we've met today. We want to continue doing our quarterly board corners. So giving updates to the district and our community through the board corners. We do want to continue. We really thought that doing the service projects together was a good way to unify as a board, as well as to serve our students and our community. So we plan to do that again this year. So keep an eye out on your email of what we end up having as opportunities for that. We kind of started discussing ideas for presentations to civic groups and scheduling. And then we sort of backtracked and said, well, we need to have deeper discussion about the bond, what that looks like, what outreach's role is in that. Is there a separate bond PR committee? Like, there's kind of too much to weed through to really, for us to make decisions before we have that deeper conversation at the board retreat. So we sort of paused on that, but the other things we want to move, as well as student listening sessions. And we're thinking on the student listening sessions to try to diversify which classes we go to and which maybe get a couple different grades, get some AP classes, some not, to really try to get as broad of a swath of feedback as we can. And otherwise, I don't know, Christine, I know you took notes at legislative, so I didn't know if you wanted to talk about that, because I feel like you're better versed than me.
Yeah, you know what? I didn't pull up my note, but I will if you give me.
Sorry, I sort of just threw her under the bus.
No, I'm so
not-
sorry. I
Nope.
was taking notes and I forgot that was a committee that I should report on. Here, I have it up. On Friday, the 29th, we met with Sam and Larry Nelson, our district lobbyists. It was a very productive meeting. We met for a couple hours. We talked about what to expect in the upcoming legislative session. All of this talk about property taxes, they just said, yes, somebody is going to propose something to eliminate property taxes and replace them with a per transaction fee. And we talked about what that would mean for the district, and it's all very unclear. I think right now there are just so many questions as to what, if that's enacted, what does that mean with the state funding formula? So that will be something that the legislative committee will be paying close attention to. There was a summer study this summer. The legislature did summer study to learn more about property taxes and how to get them down. And then they also did one on community. They did a few. And actually, I should forward this to the rest of the board and for anybody in the public that wants to look it up. I didn't know this, but the summer study, you can look up online all the background documents that they read or that they were supposed to read before the study and that were supposed to supplement this study. And it was Larry who recommended reading one on the state aid formula and for schools, and on some statistics on our property taxes, and one also on growth. I sent those to the legislative committee, but I will sure send them to the rest of the board. Otherwise, we were just talking about strategies for how we can educate legislators, what's the best way to reach people to make sure that they understand what's happening in our district, what makes us unique. And we were encouraged to talk to every legislator from the area who has a part of Rapid City area schools in there. So I think we're going to be talking about strategies and making sure that we reach people in the right way and give them the information they need to make good decisions about our district or about school funding in South Dakota.
All right, thank you for that report. Board, any questions for Mrs. Stephenson? All right, seeing none, I attended the Black Hills Social Services co-op. We meet the fourth Wednesday of every month, and Dr. Joe Hugh called me in a couple of weeks ago, and they want to make sure that they are sensitive to comments that they hear in the community, that we, meaning the Rapid City areas, that they are stealing teachers from Rapid City area schools, and they wanted me to know that that's not what they're trying to do. They have no intentions. They appreciate our partnership with them and don't want in any way to sour that relationship. And so I told them I hadn't heard that comment. I mentioned that to somebody, and they said they've heard the comment. I told Dr. Thompson that he is going to set up a meeting with you to reiterate the same thing, that they want to be in partnership and are not trying to be competitive with our staff in any type of way. Also, they did a presentation this last meeting on all the different things and departments that they do to help. And it's over 100 and some odd different things that they do around the state, around the area. It's just mind-boggling. And so I asked them, how does the community know of all these 100 different things? And basically he said, if you're in need, call them and see if that's something that they will do. They are that active in our community and in the state. They were also having a desire to come and talk about maybe some of the bigger things that they do in the community. And I told them we would, well, as a board, we would welcome that information, and we can do that during study sessions. So their budget is doing good. They re-voted for officers, which basically kind of stayed the same, but they were also earlier concerned about the federal funding, but obviously they received theirs just like we did. So things are running smooth. All right. Any other committee reports? All right. Now to others. Anybody have a other? No? Oh, Mrs. Clapham.
Slow getting that thing in. But it is very brief. I know Dr. Stresser really wants to get to see his daughter play ball, and I want him to get there too.
Oh, he can
So-
go.
I know, I was like, you should go.
No, I'm not trying to be funny, but
No, I know.
yeah.
But my,
Go ahead.
just two very brief things were, one, I noticed, it was interesting on Blackout Suite, sometimes I think there's this very negative perception of like testing, and we had our maps, and I noticed they labeled as assessments, and that's really in like understanding for parents when you hear your child go and say, you know, testing, but it really is like, this is telling us where they are and what they need. So I think sometimes there's just such a negative perception of like, oh, we test all the time, but it's like, we don't know how to help our students if we don't know where they are. And so just to kind of take that global look of like, assessment is important to help us educate and make individual plans as best we can for students. So I thought that was just an interesting wording choice, but that made a lot of sense. And the other thing was I was gonna thank transportation because I noticed my daughter knew her bus driver's name on the first day, and last year it was like October before we knew his name, and she had a new driver. And so she said he introduced himself, and we talked a lot about building that rapport, and so I really appreciated that. And so it seems like a little thing, but it goes a long way, so thank you.
Any other? All right, well, good. I have a few. For our breakfast on Monday, we're doing a pot bless, I call it a pot bless breakfast. And so I have Ms. Clapham committed to muffins and sausage. I have Angela committed to fruit. And I will do steak and eggs. The steak part being brisket and the eggs part being just an egg bake. So I wanted to coordinate this now. Are there any other board members that want to bring anything or do anything?
I'll bring something, but I don't
Okay.
know what yet.
All right, we've got, okay, that's Miss Urban with something. I'll put that down.
Bring a cheese Danish.
There it is, okay. Ms. Moore with Danish.
I can do coffee.
All right, coffee.
I had said I wasn't gonna be here, but I changed my plan, so I think I will be here, so I'll bring something.
All right, so we have coffee. We don't have any juice, so if somebody wants to bring orange juice or something like that.
I'll bring juice.
All right, there it is. Beautiful. I've printed a pre-agenda for that retreat. It will be finalized and sent out on Thursday. I have a concern that we're not gonna, the agenda is the way that it is because we technically only have 4 hours. And that is not a lot of time. And I am trying to be funny, but for this group, that's not a lot of time to talk about the things that we want to do. We have an icebreaker, gotta have some ideas for that. I asked Dr. Thompson just to give us an update on her 2 months, 90 day, call it a 90-day update, just to hear from her how she feels things are going and that type of thing. Then I wanted to bring up your temperature on term increase, which won't take that long. We also have the important work, if we want to do a board evaluation, talk about what does this board want to accomplish in the next coming year. And as you think about that, we want to make a distinction. It's not what the district is going to do this year. It's what the 7 of us are going to get accomplished this year. And that leads into, we had talked about, we have the ability for a board self-evaluation from Super Eval, and that's the work that you put on the self-evaluation. So at the end, we will say, did we do what we said we wanted to do, or did we not do what we said we were going to do? And for us, for this district, we can only go year by year because there's a potential for the board to change every year. So it's basically a yearly self-evaluation. Okay, any questions on that? And the most time-consuming discussion that we will have is the board survey discussion. And Mr. Sassy, do you know when we're going to get the slides, that presentation?
I have the slides. I apologize. I thought I sent them. I'll send them again.
Okay, did anybody else get them? So that was a no.
Okay, I'll send them again. And then we had several other items that we talked about during last week's facilities committee that the company's working on for us in terms of data that we'll try to get out ASAP when we have our hands on it.
Okay, and Jade's going to be here as part of that discussion.
Yes.
So board members, when you get the slide presentation, we will use that as an outline for our discussion. Some of the slides we may just skip over it, but I'm pretty sure that there are other slides that we will have extensive discussion on. Ultimately, making some determinations on where we go from here, from amount to dates. And so I'm assuming that is going to be a very lengthy and important discussion. So I got recommendations from two of you, and the reason why they're not on here, especially the cell phone, is because of time. Especially if it's only 4 hours. Now, you have, as a board, you have two options. We can extend the time, if anybody has that in their schedule, to push the retreat past 1 o'clock, maybe move it to 3 o'clock, to add discussion. And so we can put these other items, cell phone, Jamie wanted to put negotiation and priorities and focuses, which are both important. Well, let me go back to cell phone. Board, will you help me out? My understanding of what we decided to do about cell phones is, number one, we learned that we don't have a specific policy. Number two, we have procedures in the handbook that we were going to allow for this year to play out. Dr. Thompson was going to put together a committee, whatever it is, to look at how this year panned out and then make recommendations. Is that my understanding of what we decided to do about, or not, of our thoughts about a cell phone policy? Correct me if I'm Mrs. Urban.
I think that's correct. And I also think because we're enforcing that procedure in the handbook that we are seeing impacts. So I think we need some more time to see if that's working and for Dr. Thompson to get a committee together. So I'm not sure that there's a whole lot to discuss, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I think the reason I wanted to bring it up is because, one, as I sent you all, the state legislature passed a law encouraging districts to come up with a cell phone policy, and we don't have one. And I think at the board level, taking some action to at least get that started before the legislative session might behoove us. Two, I mean, Dusty Johnson just had a press release today that if he's elected, he's going to implement a state ban on cell phones in classrooms. I just feel like, and also what is happening at Stevenson Central this year is only one option for how to best manage cell phones. And I think that getting our administrators and some students and some parents on a specific committee with a purpose of like looking at best practices, not just monitoring what's happening, but what are the best practices? What should we be doing to encourage learning? And officially doing it at a board level and not saying, well, we're going to kind of just see what happens this year. I think it would be a smart, proactive move for this district to do. And that's why I wanted to bring it up at the board retreat. I am not okay with, well, we'll just see what happens. We're going to know what happens after a quarter.
I didn't communicate well. It's more than just we'll see what happens, but as a board, we can't make a recommendation until we know what's going on now, and there's been no study or whatever. So this committee that Dr. Thompson is going to put together is going to do that. Look at best, what are we doing now? Is it working or not working? What should we be doing is all the work that's going to come out of that. And let me just say, I think it's more important for that policy to come from the bottom up than from the up down, because teachers in classrooms are the ones that know best and are going to have to deal with whatever is decided in a policy. And I'd rather hear from a teacher of what works and the principals what works for them than us telling them what we feel works best for them.
I have two responses to that. I'd be fine with doing what we're doing if we said specifically that the goal is that by this date, whatever committee you're forming comes up with a recommended policy that the district could adopt. Because I don't want to just float along without a district policy. I don't want to have wishy-washy procedures that do or don't. In the case of our procedures, have not been enforced just based on whoever is in the administration at any given building. I totally respect your bottom-up approach towards developing the policy, with the exception of the fact that sometimes there is research that perhaps an administrator might know that a teacher might not. Or a teacher might say, this is all too much for me. I don't want to deal with it. Let's let the kid, and I've heard teachers say this, if they don't want to learn, they can be on their cell phone and I'll teach the kids who want to learn. And so yes, I need input from teachers, but I think we also need input from people who are looking at research at a higher level to kind of guide what best practice should be.
All right, so board, it is up, forgot my options list. We have two options. We can extend the time on Monday, or we can schedule study sessions to deal with topics that we aren't able to fit in to. And I made the assumption, but are you all of the same assumption that 4 hours is not a lot of time to even do what we want to do? And we have evaluations of our employees to do. So, okay, I've got one extend.
A study session would be my preference, but.
Okay.
my own-
I would suggest a study session, because then if you want teacher input, or if you want, so we can invite people up to speak at open forum, and it would be on topic. We could be, we could listen to people from what you say is not from top down to bottom, or from teaching levels on up. So I would vote for a study session as well.
One extend, two study sessions.
I canceled a trip to Denver, so I'm good. I'll stay until 3.
Okay, that's
2 to 2. Here we are.
two extends, two study sessions.
I can accommodate either one.
Okay, we have a neutral, so we have 2, 2, and 1.
I'm neutral also. I can stay until 3 or schedule another study session.
So it sounds like you're the tiebreaker, President.
All right, I don't mind extending till 3. So this will change the agenda in 2 ways. That we won't break for lunch. We were gonna break for lunch and go out to a restaurant and adjourn there. But now we'll just have something brought in. I mean, Jimmy John's, whatever. I guess Sheila will discuss what we'll have brought in. All right, so with that being said, we'll add cell phone discussion. We'll add cell phone discussion. And how long do you think the negotiations subject will last?
Not terribly long.
Okay, all right. And Ms. Rafferty, I can't remember what your recommendations for the agenda were. I remember you responded, or I think you responded. Okay, all right. So anybody else? All right, so we'll
And I
add.
can say mine's not do or die. Do I think it should happen before January? Sure. But if we're talking about being efficient, it's not a hill to die on for me.
Can I just say too, I'm worried because some of these are pretty pressing. So maybe there's like a priority list, and if it gets to 3 o'clock and we haven't hit Jamie's, for example, and she said it's not
And I-
super important, then maybe we hold it. Because some of these, like the board survey and the bond, like I do anticipate that's gonna take a while, and I don't think it's something we should rush. And
I agree. That's why I didn't put
Mhm.
other stuff on there.
So maybe if we don't get to it, we don't get to it, and you just put it in the order that we wanted to go in.
I
Okay.
agree with that plan.
Okay, all right. So we'll extend the meeting without extend the agenda without adding to the agenda. And we can solve the problem by putting other or putting it on and just not, I'd rather not, if we don't think we're gonna get to it, to me, it doesn't make sense to put it on. That's just in my brain. So you can solve that by putting others, and if there is time, which in my brain, we have 3 in executive sessions, we have 3 employees. We're gonna talk about their evaluations, so, you know, that's not necessarily a sure, it can be, I guess. But, okay, so we're gonna extend without adding to the agenda. Is that a consensus that we can have?
I think you should put there.
Okay, we'll put, yeah, it's not on there now. So we'll put other. And Christine, if you would like to at that time bring up cell phones or any other board member, whatever you want to bring up, we can deal with it at that time. All right, very good. Committees. We still do not have anybody on the Performing Arts Center Committee. Vice President Clapham reminded me that we are contractually obligated to have a board member on that committee. Mrs. Clapham, myself, and Mrs. Urban are committee saturated and would not it wouldn't be fair for one of us to be on this committee. So any volunteers for the Performing Arts Center Committee?
And if
You know
ever,
what
it's
day
once a
they meet?
month on Wednesdays at
Once a month on-
7:30.
Yeah.
Yes, Michael often attended by Zoom, he said. I
Oh,
asked him. But he
Okay.
didn't even actually have to be there.
If it's 7:30 a.m. on Wednesdays,
It's like the
I can do that.
first Wednesday, I think. I think it's like the first Wednesday once a month.
all right, we have a winner. Thank you, Ms. Stephenson. I appreciate that. Just FYI, we do have an opening on the Title VI Parent Advisory Committee. Again, it's not necessary to have 3, but just wanting you to know at this point, it's Walt and I. So if you wanted to jump on that, you could do that. All right. My last other, we still don't have a volunteer to serve on the Student School Board Selection Committee.
Remind me what day it is.
I can't. The 11th. Oh, that's right. That's why I'm not going, because I'm on my way to Spain.
I can do it.
Okay. All right. So Angela and
Me.
Ms. Clapham.
Yep.
Sheila, so can you let Ms. Kiner know that Angela and Jamie are going to be on that committee? That's awesome, because Mrs. Urban and I were on it last year, so that's spreading the wealth. Okay, that's all the.
I've
Yes.
got another. I just wanted to let the board know, I sent an email about a volunteer opportunity this Saturday. I heard from several of you, including myself, that it's kind of a hard ask this early in the school year and with a lot of things going on. So we're just gonna sideline that for now and look for an opportunity later in the semester.
Hey, let me make sure I've talked about everything. I think, Phil, I got papers and notes and stuff everywhere. But I think that is it. Anybody with any other? With that being said, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We hear you not.